90% of first-time home buyers regret the purchase. That is actually up from 82 just a year ago. So I'm going to give you the top 5 reasons on how to avoid these regrets when you buy your home, whether it's your first time or moving up. There's all these little mistakes that we can make in an effort to try to get that home faster that will, if we can avoid them, will make us live in that home without the regrets that 90% of people are having. Hey, I'm Saul Carter. I'm a realtor here in the Conejo Valley area, and I just want to let you know that I really think about when I'm doing this is business sense, common sense, and being that uncommon realtor. So let's get into it. Here's the top 5 reasons or things that you need to think about to avoid those regrets when you buy that home. And number 1 is buying a home in the wrong location. Now, the truth is, when you're buying a home, what's the one thing that you can never change in a million years, unless there's an earthquake, is the location, right? So you can't buy that home here and then move it over into this other neighborhood without, just selling it, right? So that's just one of the things that you need to think about. And what are the kind of location factors that can become annoying that might not be annoying when you first buy the property? So let's say you buy your property in the summer and you're down the street from a school or maybe 2, and twice a day during the school year, you can't even pull out of your driveway because the school buses are in the way, and schools and all these other things are going. That's something when you're buying during the summer you might not notice, right? So that's a huge regret. There's also things to closeness to the freeway. Can you hear the freeway when you're in your backyard, right? You want to think about those things because they can get annoying. Is there a close airport? Does it get too foggy? Is it walkable? Do you feel comfortable walking from here to the local market, today? Because you're probably not going to be able to feel as comfortable tomorrow, right? You need to think about these things, doing a lot of things. Now, what are your normal everyday habits? Do you like to go to the beach? Do you like to go hiking in the foothills? Whatever it might be, do you have actual access to those things if you move here? It doesn't mean you can't drive longer, but maybe that driving longer is really annoying. So let's avoid that if we can, so we don't run into those problems, right? So, figure out what your top things that might be annoying and, avoid those. Now, can there be a house that just has everything that you're like, you know what, it has everything, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that here. I'm gonna show you what I keep looking down for. Woo! This is Suki. She's our Bengal, and she loves it in here, only when I'm talking, right? So anyway, all right. Uh-oh, she's losing stuff. Ba-doop. Okay, sorry, back to the video. Next is avoiding the bad neighborhoods. Now, along those lines, there are neighborhoods that you feel, and I talked about this a little bit, but you want to avoid walking in some neighborhoods and you want to just run around in all the other ones. It's no problem. Do you have that proximity to that park? Knock on a couple doors, drive the entire neighborhood. One of the things that I did is, does your neighborhood have an HOA? Now that might seem annoying, but that means that somebody besides you holding all your neighbors to a minimum standard of behavior and decor and all those things, which really holds value in a neighborhood. So think about that. Does it have an HOA? Is that HOA fee too large? Is it too small? Like if it's, I like a small HOA, so it doesn't have a lot of power, but so it doesn't cost me a lot, but there's somebody besides me, so I don't have to be the bad guy, go knock on our neighbor's door. I once lived in a house that the neighbor inherited the property, was free and clear. He inherited it and moved in after he got out of jail. Now, he had all kinds of crazy people coming to the house. He also really loved to work on vehicles and leave them in his front yard and driveway. And so it just brought the entire neighborhood down. And it's a lot harder to have that conversation one-on-one. So there is a little bit of standard keeping that comes with an HOA. So don't be afraid of it, but that's part of your location. You need to understand, do you like that neighborhood, and get those reality checks. Like I said before, drive those neighborhoods in the morning and the afternoon, on the weekends, in the evenings. Really find out what you're looking at. It's a super minimal investment in something that is going to be a big dollar amount for, quote unquote 30 years, right? The average home does sell around 7, so it's not a lifetime thing. But, we want to make sure that we are comfortable if that's somewhere we plan on being, right? All right, number 3. And this one is not necessarily in your hands, but it is something that is fixable, but it is something that creates a lot of regret. So that is buying a home, and then like 3 months later or a month later, interest rates drop. Now, interest rates were a year and a half ago pretty high by modern standards. They weren't horrible or insurmountable, but they are starting to go down now. Now, the trick is that when they go down, look, my light just went out. I'm not going to worry about it. When they go down, you have regret because you have that mortgage that you have at that higher interest rate. Now, if you're managing everything properly and you have some reserves, you can go in there and refinance. That is a fixable thing. The one thing you can't fix per se is the price, but you can fix a mortgage rate. So don't be as afraid of it, and just understand that times change. I do feel like we'll see the next 3 or 4 years a lowering in interest rates. So it's going to make things continually a little bit more affordable. And I bought this house that we're in, and we're probably going to refi this year sometime. I think that that is something that would make sense. You can't do it all the time, but people really try to avoid those crazy amounts in interest, and they really regret it when those interest rates go down. Now we're seeing that. So if you're worried about that, just understand that that's part of the game. The other flip side of that coin is you cannot take advantage of the equity of the property until you own it, right? So if you never own property, you never get that equity in your pocket. Now, just something food for thought, basically. It is a fixable thing, though. All right. Number 4 is outgrowing your home too quickly. Now, this again is something you can live with. I know families who had, 3 kids living in one room, but by today's standards, that is not something that most people are comfortable with. So, do you sacrifice some of these other little areas to make sure that you get that extra room? Or maybe it's a property that you can build on, or it has an ADU that you can switch over and actually use for a personal residence or part of a residence. Make sure that you account for, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years in property being expandable to the size of your family. And size of your family includes grandma, as well as having new kids. Those things are things that you might want to think about. Like if grandma is going to not be able to, quote unquote, live on her own for too much longer, you need to think about that when you're buying a property, because that is something that you will get into some heavy regrets on if that's, a responsibility that you think you need to take on. So anyway, and then last but not least is understanding the true cost of owning a home. There are typically, especially after you just move in, there are things that didn't get caught in home inspections that pop up. One of the things, we bought our house that we currently live in the summer. If we would have gone and asked the neighbors, we would have found this out. But our portion of our porch actually floods when there's heavy rain. Now, we got it fixed, but that was an extra $5 grand that we had to take care of to do that. And so is that, that can be a big expense. Luckily, it wasn't that horrible for us at the time, but it's an expense that I didn't want to make, right? So there are things like that. If you go and talk to your neighbors, learn about it, just 2 or 3 neighbors, especially adjacent ones, find out a little bit of history of that property, but start to understand all the different things that can pop up when you own the property. You can't call your landlord to come fix the AC or the heater. All the little things that pop up can start to add up. and they're your responsibility, especially if you're a first-time home buyer. It's something you really need to think about. So those are the top 5 ways to help avoid the regrets that 90% of millennials are feeling when they buy a home. And let's avoid those. So if you need more tips, tricks, whatnot, click down there, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon.